The room goes silent the moment Prince stops talking. It's a closed-door meeting in Los Angeles, late 1980s, industry territory thick with power. Quincy Jones is seated at the head of the table, glasses low on his nose, a yellow legal pad in front of him. Prince is standing, not pacing, still, one hand resting on the edge of the table where a contract folder lies half open. The air freezes, not because voices were raised, but because something sacred has just been challenged, creative control, and Prince has said it out loud. This isn't a studio, it's not a rehearsal space where sound can soften conflict. It's a conference room, neutral, corporate, unforgiving. The turning point object is the contract on the table, pages marked, corners bent. According to accounts, Prince has just questioned who ultimately decides what makes it onto a record, not rhetorically, directly. Quincy Jones, the most powerful producer in the room, doesn't answer right away. That pause is the silence people remember. Days earlier, this meeting was supposed to be routine, a discussion about music, possibly collaboration, possibly guidance. Quincy Jones represented establishment excellence, the man behind landmark records trusted by labels, studios, networks. Prince represented something more volatile, total authorship, self-contained genius, resistance to being shaped. In the black music industry, these roles came with rules. Elders advised, younger artists listened. Control flowed downward, not sideways. Prince had already been pushing against those rules. He'd fought labels over masters. He'd insisted on writing, producing, arranging himself. He treated studios like sanctuaries and contracts like threats. Quincy Jones, by contrast, believed in systems, teams of musicians, editors, executives, all aligned under a producer's vision. Both men believed in excellence. They disagreed on who owned it. The lead-up to the meeting carried warning signs. According to insiders, Prince arrived with notes, specific points. He wasn't there to be mentored, he was there to clarify boundaries. The contract folder on the table symbolized more than paperwork. It symbolized a future where Prince's sound might be filtered through someone else's authority. Race and power sharpened everything. Black artists rarely confronted black gatekeepers this directly, especially ones as revered as Quincy Jones. To do so risked being labeled difficult, ungrateful, unstable. Prince knew this. That knowledge didn't slow him down, it hardened him. When the conversation turned to decision-making, who signs off on final mixes, who chooses singles, Prince reportedly leaned forward. His voice stayed calm. He didn't accuse, he asked, "Who has final say?" The question landed on the table next to the contract, heavy as a gavel. Quincy Jones's silence wasn't confusion, it was calculation. Everyone in the room understood the hierarchy. Quincy had the resume, the leverage, the institutional trust. Prince had the momentum, the mystique, the audacity to question the structure itself. The silence stretched long enough for assistants to stop taking notes. This was the core incident forming in real time, not an argument, a confrontation through clarity. Prince wasn't asking for permission, he was stating a condition. If he was involved, control would not be shared lightly. The industry context loomed over the table. Collaboration often meant compromise. Compromise often meant dilution. For Prince, dilution was unacceptable. He had built his sound by refusing outside hands. Quincy Jones had built his legacy by orchestrating them. Two philosophies, one room, one contract. According to some accounts, Quincy finally responded with measured authority, explaining the value of experience, of perspective, of knowing when to let go and when to guide. Prince listened. Then, crucially, he didn't yield. He restated his position. Creative control was not negotiable. Not now,
not ever. That restatement is what drained the room of sound. Chairs didn't move, pens didn't scratch. The contract stayed open, unresolved. Everyone present understood what was at stake. Prince could lose access to one of the most powerful allies in music. Quincy Jones could be publicly defied by a younger artist refusing the traditional order. The meeting did not explode, it narrowed. Words became fewer, meanings became sharper. The silence wasn't awkward, it was structural. Something fundamental had been exposed. The cliff edge hangs there. Does Quincy Jones shut this down, asserting authority? Or does he allow the challenge to stand, reshaping how power moves between generations? The answer hasn't arrived yet. The room is still silent.
The next morning, the contract was still unsigned. That detail traveled faster than any quote. In Los Angeles offices, where deals usually closed quietly, people noticed the delay. Prince had left the meeting without agreement. Quincy Jones had not followed up immediately. The silence from that conference room was now echoing outward, shaping how the industry interpreted what had happened around that table. At rehearsal later that day, different building, same city, Prince played with unusual intensity. According to accounts, he stopped the band mid-song, pointing not at a missed note, but at a feel he didn't like. Control was the theme again. The anchor detail was the studio console this time, Prince standing beside it, insisting on adjustments others might have ignored. The confrontation with Quincy Jones hadn't softened him, it had clarified his posture. Meanwhile, Quincy Jones addressed the situation in his own way. In a separate office, surrounded by plaques and framed photos, he spoke with colleagues about process and standards. He didn't name Prince directly, but the meaning was clear. Creative control, in Quincy's world, came with responsibility to something larger than self. Albums weren't just expressions, they were systems. His yellow legal pad from the meeting remained on his desk, notes untouched. The escalation moved in steps. First, intermediaries. Mutual contacts reached out, framing the meeting as a misunderstanding. Could Prince reconsider? Could Quincy clarify? Each message circled back to the same object, the contract. Its clauses on final approval became the battlefield. Prince's camp reportedly pushed back on language that diluted authority. Quincy's side emphasized collaboration, not concession. That evening, at another studio session, Prince was seen reviewing lyrics alone, headphones on, door closed. The image mattered. Solitude was his defense. Creative control, to him, wasn't ego, it was protection. The more pressure he felt from outside structures, the tighter he pulled inward. The confrontation had triggered that reflex. By contrast, Quincy Jones moved through public spaces with ease. At a dinner event that week, he was relaxed, joking, holding court. When someone mentioned Prince in passing, Quincy smiled, but said little. That smile, polite, unreadable, became another anchor detail in the legend. Silence again, but strategic. The hierarchy was being tested not through shouting, but through patience. Who would blink first? Prince needed nothing from Quincy Jones except respect for autonomy. Quincy Jones needed nothing from Prince except recognition of shared authority. Both men were powerful enough to walk away. That symmetry raised the stakes. According to insiders, a second meeting was proposed. Smaller room, fewer people, same contract. Prince agreed to attend, but only if specific language was addressed. Quincy agreed to listen. The location was again neutral, corporate, stripped of musical warmth. No instruments, just paper, chairs, and reputations. In the days leading up to that follow-up, industry chatter intensified. Younger artists watched closely. If Prince succeeded, it would signal a shift, proof that total control wasn't just a myth whispered in studios. If Quincy Jones held the line, it would reaffirm the old order.
genius still needed governance. The night before the meeting, Prince reportedly worked late, alone, programming drums, layering synths, reminding himself what he protected. The sound in that room was his anchor, evidence that his instincts worked. Quincy Jones that same night was said to be reviewing past projects, reminding himself how collaboration had produced timeless work. Two men reinforcing their truths before collision. When they finally sat down again, the contract returned to the center of the table. Same folder, same clauses, different weight. Prince spoke first this time, calm, direct. He didn't accuse Quincy of overreach, he stated a boundary. Final creative decisions would remain his. Without that, there would be no deal. Quincy Jones listened, hands folded, eyes steady. The room waited. This was the escalation's edge, the moment right before detonation. Either authority would be asserted or redefined. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was loaded. Seconds stretching, everyone aware they were about to witness something rare. A young artist forcing the system to answer him on his terms.
The detonation arrives without raised voices. Prince finishes his sentence and leans back in his chair. Exact action? He closes the contract folder himself and slides it an inch away from Quincy Jones. Exact reaction? No one in the room moves. Exact consequence. The meeting ends without a deal. That's the silence people remember, the sound of power recalibrating in real time. Quincy Jones looks at the folder, then at Prince. According to accounts, he doesn't argue the point, he doesn't lecture, he acknowledges the position. That acknowledgement, restrained and professional, is its own admission. The challenge has been heard. Whether accepted or not, it can't be dismissed. The room remains quiet because everyone understands what just happened. An artist has refused to surrender authorship to the most respected producer in the business and lived. The immediate aftermath is procedural. Handshakes are polite, chairs scrape softly, assistants gather papers. No one celebrates, no one storms out, but the contract stays unsigned. That detail circulates fast. By the next morning, industry offices are buzzing with the same sentence repeated in different tones. Prince wouldn't give up control. Quincy wouldn't demand it. What changes first is behavior. Prince's camp tightens further. Future conversations with producers begin with explicit language about final say. The confrontation becomes precedent. When executives push, Prince's team references that meeting without naming names. The message lands anyway. Creative control is no longer implied, it's demanded. Quincy Jones's response is quieter, but just as influential. In subsequent projects, he's said to emphasize mutual respect earlier, clarifying roles before sessions begin. The system adapts. Not because Quincy was defeated, but because the confrontation exposed a fault line. Authority based solely on legacy could now be questioned by results. The cultural meaning settles over weeks. Younger artists, especially black musicians watching from the margins, take note. The anchor detail they repeat isn't the contract itself, but the silence after it was closed. Silence means the system didn't crush the challenge, it paused. That pause is possibility. According to some insiders, Quincy later spoke about Prince with a mix of admiration and caution, calling him uncompromising, brilliant, difficult to contain. Those words matter. Contain implies something that resists structure. Prince had proven that resistance could be non-negotiable and still respected. The room where it happened fades into memory, but the template remains. Confrontation doesn't have to be explosive to be effective. It can be precise, calm, grounded in boundaries. Prince didn't win a contract, he won a definition of himself that no one else could rewrite. In the years that followed, Prince's insistence on control would escalate into public battles, name changes, visible war with labels. But this moment, with Quincy Jones, in that silent room, was an early proof. He was willing to risk opportunity to preserve authorship. That willingness became his leverage. The brutal closing truth is this: Prince confronting Quincy Jones wasn't about disrespecting a legend, it was about refusing to become managed by one. The room went silent because everyone present understood they had just witnessed a rule being challenged and surviving.